Welcome to Eagle Eye.
What a break from Manolo!
Interviewing your favorite USA Eagles around the globe.
Tony Lamb into the 22.
Now, here's your host, Bill Baker.
Hey everybody, welcome to Eagle Eye. In this episode, I'm joined by recently retired Captain America, Blaine Scully. We talk about his rise in rugby from Cal to Cardiff, where he quickly became a fan favorite. We relive the 2018 Challenge Cup final in which he scores a dramatic try in the corner to help secure the win for the Blues. And what's ahead for Blaine? All that and more. I hope you enjoyed the conversation.
Bill, how are you?
Blaine, how are you doing?
Good.
I know you're busy moving on with the rest of your life, but so how has retirement been for you so far?
It's been interesting, I suppose. I retired directly into fatherhood, which has been amazing. Right. And our daughter just turned 6 months as of last week, which is pretty incredible. Yeah, I suppose I announced my retirement and we were into lockdown about a week or two later. And so, probably no different from everyone else, just trying to navigate it the best we can. And I guess it's kind of forced me to slow down and really kind of take some time into identifying what might be next. It was fortunate to have a few different things going on at the time. Unfortunately, the NBC broadcast work had to pause with the pause of sport, but was doing some academic work in a program called Crossover into Business, which is a program that is ran by a professor at Harvard Business School, which was a great experience. And as I kind of mentioned, just kind of really trying to identify where I kind of fit into this post-rugby world for myself.
What's been the toughest part so far for you?
Well, I mean, probably no access to a gym, but I thankfully have a beach close by, so I do my early morning runs, which is a bit of mental health. I was actually ready for the transition. I kind of come to terms with my rugby experience and the idea that sport's temporary and you can't make tackles for forever. So I've sort of enjoyed the transition in the sense that I get to look, touch, and feel at a bunch of different things. I suppose that the toughest part is actually having something to sink your teeth into each and every day. You kind of know the rules, you know how everything works as an athlete for as long as I was. And also the sense of feedback that you get every single day, which is equally a valuable thing for me, at least in my experience. I love the knowing where I was each and every day compared to what I was doing, compared to everyone else I was competing with, and obviously the scoreboard's sort of the ultimate feedback mechanism. So that's sort of been an interesting challenge. But that being said, I've had a lot of virtual support, and my wife and I have a lot of things to be thankful for, especially our healthy little girl. So
absolutely. Let's step back a little bit. Let's go to Cal. What got you into the game? You don't usually see the transition from water polo to rugby.
Yeah. So mom did a pretty good job keeping me away from football. So my brother and dad were football players in college, and I loved basketball and I played a lot of basketball but I always wanted to play and compete at everything. That's sort of how I was and still am, really. And I was a swimmer. I did swim growing up, and in addition to every other sport I could. And then, found water polo in high school, did that, and got pretty good at that, and was planning on playing in college. Although I kind of realized that it wasn't really what I wanted to do, and so I sort of ended up an athlete without a sport, and rugby kind of found me, and it ended up being what I was supposed to do all along, and what I connected so quickly to the sport was in the fact that it just was like everything I'd ever known and played combined into one thing. And I just love that about the game. You're having to solve everything in real time with only the folks on the field, and there is so much to enjoy about the game, and I just truly did sort of feel like this was what I was supposed to do.
So I'm going to put on my detective hat for a second. So you graduated Cal in 2011.
Yep.
And then you signed with Leicester in 2013. So what were you doing for 2 years?
So I went to the 2011 World Cup and had a few opportunities to head overseas, but they weren't necessarily the right opportunity. So went back. That's when we first competed in the Pan American Games as a seven program. Then the sevens program went full time in 2012. So moved down to Chula Vista and did that, and then I ruptured my Achilles in March of 2012, and so that basically, took me out for a year, and I call that kind of my character year. So then returned back to the sevens program at the beginning of 2013, completed that season, and then got a trial opportunity at Leicester, and that's sort of how that happened.
So let's talk about that character year. Was there a point in that year where you just it kind of got you going in your direction more? Maybe it gave you more an impact to try harder and get back into shape and get overseas. I'm assuming you might have lost a couple options.
Well, I'd say I think there's a few things in that. So, right away it was in training before the week before the Hong Kong Sevens, and knew that it was bad. I kind of wasn't doing anything particularly dynamic. I was just kind of a slow backpedal. I went to go forward, and I thought I got hit by the golf cart. Oh. And until I tried to take a step and had no control over my left foot. So I actually called my coach at Cal, Coach Billups, when I was on the kind of physio table, and he said, "Come home and we'll fix you." And so I moved back to Northern California and moved in with my then girlfriend, now wife, which she was very excited that she was going to have to work full time plus play nurse to me. And because I was immobile effectively, and with an Achilles injury, you're basically immobilized for your foot for a few months in order to let the tendon heal. And then I went to Cal, and Coach Clark and Coach Billups, kind of took me on as sort of a grad assistant type of role, and then I rehabbed full time, and I did some actually a sport business class at Stanford. So I tried to do a few different things then, but it was really one of those moments where, as an athlete, you kind of make decisions based on a number of factors, but I kind of had to fundamentally decide that this is what I truly wanted to do, and I had to totally commit to my rehabilitation. I didn't want to just kind of come back the same. I wanted to come back stronger, and so that wasn't just physically, that was mentally as well. And kind of, we talked a little bit about that sport as temporary, which also I think has the added benefit, at least in my perspective, of making you really grateful for the time you get. And I was just willing to work that much harder at sort of realizing my aspiration to, be as good as I could be in the sport of rugby and pursue it at the highest level. So right. By the time my Leicester opportunity came around, which was originally a 2-week trial, I was just going in with the mentality I had nothing to lose and I was going to give it everything I had.
Going from the amateur market in the United States into Leicester, then over to Cardiff Blues environment, it was that sevens tournament with Leicester that really got you going, let's say. Fans fell in love with you right away. Obviously a great work ethic on the pitch is important to any fan, really. But then going over to Cardiff, and I don't want to skip out on Leicester's story, but moving over to Cardiff, how the fans reacted to you was really cool. So going from United States amateur level to playing in front of, 20,000 fans, whatever, and having that reaction, I mean, how did you make that work? I mean, it must have been such a shock.
I mean, I guess it wasn't really for me in the sense that, obviously I was incredibly fortunate in the environments I was in, right, in Cardiff and Leicester, kind of two sort of cathedrals of rugby and European context, and Leicester's tradition, Cardiff's tradition. I mean, just really two fortunate opportunities from my standpoint, and really engaged fan bases who know a lot about the game and who are participatory. Like, they want to engage with their players, and I think in both instances, because they're so well educated and know the game so well, and from my standpoint, what they did appreciate was I gave it everything I had, and you could see that, and I also reciprocated the appreciation. I equally enjoyed, their enthusiasm for the game, and so we kind of shared that. And I guess through those couple of things, we kind of connected, and it made it a pretty incredible experience hopefully for both of us, but definitely for me. Kind of hearing USA chants during games and stuff was pretty cool.
What was it like outside of the stadium? Were you able to cross the streets without getting swarmed by fans?
Yeah, it's still rugby.
Yeah.
They're just, everyone was really kind. I felt both a part of both communities, which was really special, and because they kind of are rugby towns, and like I said, people are appreciative of effort, and they appreciate people who care, and they appreciate people who engage with them. And I think that's always what I try to do, is just say, hey, thanks for being a fan. Thanks for supporting us. And I want you to let you know that I'm paying attention, and I'll give you everything I have.
Well, was there ever that feeling that, or were you ever treated that way, that you were just an American rugby player overseas?
Yeah. But I always try to have a positive outlook on it. And there's always sort of the well-meaning condescension that you run into, and it's not out of ill will. It's just because, frankly, people don't know. And so my mentality was that, as opposed to sort of getting bitter about it, it's like, well, I'll just help educate you by playing really well, right? And just in demonstrating that Americans actually do play rugby, and they play rugby pretty damn well. So that was kind of my attitude towards that. And you definitely have to be patient and some conversations, but at the end of the day, like, focusing on all that stuff is just noise, right? Like, focusing on actually performing on the field is actually where it counts.
There's one match in particular, and it's the 2018 Challenge Cup final. And you scored a late dramatic try in the corner in front of, again, a big crowd, so much energy. Explain to me the atmosphere going into that match, a bit about that play, and then the reaction after the play, the post-match celebrations. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I get kind of chill still thinking about it. But in the context of the season, so it'd been a 3-year rebuild to that point. We had a number of players up for contract that year. A number of our coaching staff was actually leaving as well. So it was, like, I'm sure I'm like everyone else who watched The Last Dance. It kind of had that sort of feel where it's like, look, this is our last time together, and we're sort of on the right trajectory where we've been improving year in and year out. And, with a number of players leaving, and, kind of where we were in the context of our own sort of personal journeys, it was sort of our last chance to realize something special together. And there was a number of things that sort of clicked, and it was a really connected group. And we just kind of went all in on our European journey. And it was a pretty sort of magical period of time from a, personal career standpoint, and definitely a high. So, we go to Bilbao, and it's the European weekend. So we play on Friday, and then there's the Champions Cup on the following day. It was just a crazy game as well. And, I'd missed actually an early opportunity to score, which I was gutted about. And we finally get to the 75th minute after we make a pretty insane comeback. We come out guns blazing in the start of the second half, scoring right away, and to dot down sort of in the corner. In sort of the context of that match was again like just a real kind of career high, as far as in the context of what it meant for our game.
You seem to make a career out of making those corner dives.
Well, luckily I got the ball where I did, and like you make certain decisions on how you actually get in, because although it looks sort of like a standard slide around, like what you do when you get that ball, as far as like, do you slide early? Do you wait and then try to barge in? Do you try to dive over the top? So there's a couple different like decision-making processes that you got to go through as a wing. In that particular situation, based on the cover defense, the best thing for me to do was to go down early, and then there was a bit of dampness to the field as well, because it rained a little bit beforehand. And so I knew the slide would take me through, and all you have to do is barely cross the line, which is sort of what happened until I get obliterated by 12 trees and I think one or two other players that are flying in. But man, they get down early and then finish it.
Yeah, and you were certain you scored because if I remember correctly, there was a video review of that try, correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, are there any post-match celebration stories you're able to share?
Well, I mean, the best part about that was our hotel was literally, so we walked from the hotel to the stadium, which was amazing in itself because there were like thousands of Cardiff Blues fans that tunneled us all the way to the stadium. We walked through, the thousands of Cardiff Blues supporters that were there with the flags, and which was incredible in itself. And then walked back to the hotel after just kind of reveling in kind of this collective achievement at the stadium. And so all the supporters were there, all the families had flown out, all the team and organization was out, and we basically had the hotel to ourselves. And it was just an incredible experience to sort of be there and share that with everyone. I mean, it was a late night for sure. I mean, it was just, the trophy was there and everything. And it was just one of those sort of fleeting moments of achievement that you get in sort of the years of graft and work. And you sort of puts into sharp focus, like why you do the thing, to sort of like taste that moment. And, I mean, and then it's like the next day, boom, it's gone. Because it's like, but it's something when you reflect, you're like, oh, wow, that was a pretty special ride. Because for me, I had a couple weeks later, I had to sort of refocus and get ready for international duty as well. So that's sort of always the life you live as a athlete at the top end of the game. It was like, you can't spend a whole bunch of time thinking about what you just did, because if you aren't focused on what you're about to do, you get your butt kicked.
So to wrap up our Cardiff Blues conversation, I got to ask you about this mug.
I need a new one. Yeah.
Tell me about this.
So, I guess fans know how much I love drinking coffee, and so they made that. I think they made a few other ones, but yeah, getting better every day, Captain America thing. I think they had to do something with the Captain America, so they didn't do some copyright infringement.
Oh God, yeah.
There's like a little N or something in there, apostrophe. There's something in between, but yeah, it's just funny. My mom has a couple of those mugs, and I think we have somewhere in storage. But so funny.
All right, going back, over your career, two-time national champion at Cal, four-time All-American. Like we talked about, you won the Challenge Cup with Cardiff, Captain USA. A few World Cups, America's Championship, defeated Scotland. As you look back throughout your career, through all these accolades and accomplishments, what's your proudest moment?
It's an interesting question. I've sort of been reflecting on. I mean, I think it's like, in so many ways, it's the more I think about it, and when I hear these conversations, say like former athletes of winning this and winning that, it's like, man, we really going to distill down how many hours I put into it and how many years we put into it, just like one result. And I suppose like the reason why you do that and you say that is because sort of what went into those moments, right? So like the Scotland moment and say the Challenge Cup and the Cal national championships and whatnot. And I think like when I sort of think about it, I really never competed for, say, like a result. I love winning and I hate losing. But what I really enjoyed was the process of it all. I loved sort of the day in and day out, feedback I got. We talked about as an athlete around where am I at today versus where I was at yesterday versus where I want to be tomorrow versus my teammates who I'm competing with and then the opposition on the weekend. Like that sort of understanding that process I love. And I love doing that with a group of people who were equally as committed to that. Sort of for me, that experience was, kind of more valuable and educational than sort of any result was. But, those results are what sort of like give you that taste of, this is why you do certain things. And I wish I would have had a lot more. And
Yeah.
and because you once you get a taste of it, you realize how hungry you are for it, and it makes it so much better to shoot for and achieve and strive for results. I mean, that's why we're all in the results business, and we're all getting judged based on that in sport. But for me, like the truly sort of valuable part of that experience is obviously the relationships and those couple of highs, which sort of really validate sort of the work you put in. But I mean, for me, it's hard to sort of pick out a couple of highs. But yeah, I mean, I suppose like with that backdrop, those sort of moments where you do taste the top of the mountain are like, it's hard to sort of get past that feeling when you get to share it with that group.
And speaking of that group, say the USA Rugby group, is there someone out there now that really excites you as a player, in the USA pool, whether they're young coming in or someone currently with the team?
Ruben Haas, I've long been a fan of his, since he came into camp when he was 20, during that summer of 2018, and I've watched the kid continue to grow, and he played really well actually as a really young scrum half in a World Cup, and he's immensely talented, and he's a piece that you can build the team around. So he's probably one that sticks out for me, that I'm just really excited to watch him grow.
Let's look forward to your future. We talked earlier a little bit, and you went through some business school at Harvard, NBC Sports deal as well. What's coming up for you more? I know you have your podcast.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that for a second. Any new interviews coming up?
Yeah, so I've done a number of interviews, just working on how the second season is going to roll out. Just kind of been thinking about that. So some great interviews that are more like rugby focused than say the first season was, which is more kind of sport and leadership and how leaders kind of drive team excellence.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about that. Looking at going to now that I had a taste through that program, I'm looking at potentially grad schools as well, whether it's business or potentially even law. And then been doing some work with some sport technology companies, doing some advising there. I'm a big believer that sport and technology is only going to become more intertwined as it relates to either performance or broadcast or fan engagement in stadium, second screen, whatever it is. Sport and technology are forever intertwined at this point. And then also like the idea of private capital coming into sport and what that looks like, whether it's venture or private equity, is really interesting as well. So looking at a few of those different things, and again, assessing where I might be a good fit is sort of where I'm at now.
Well, Blaine, I think you have to go.
You hear the baby in the
a child has woken up from their nap, so. No, but it's perfect timing actually, and I really do appreciate this conversation today. I wish you the best of luck in the future. If you ever want to come back and play, my favorite team are the Free Jacks up the road from you right now. So
yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, you never say never, but I think if my mom and my wife have something to say about it, there's no more boots. Yeah,
no.
There are no more boots.
All right, thanks again, Blaine, and hope to talk to you soon.
I appreciate it, Bill. Thanks again for having me on. Love what you're doing.
Thank you.